Welcome to the Animal-Based Dad podcast, the show where metabolic health meets mental health. Through expert interviews and topic deep dives, we unpack why looking after the body is central to looking after the mind. So sit back and enjoy. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Animal-Based Dad podcast. I'm your host, Ricky Du Plessis. My guest today is a researcher whose work I've been following with quite a bit of interest for some time now. I won't do her the disservice of trying to summarize it. I'll let her introduce herself. But for the autism community and the caregivers of autism children, very, very interesting research, very, very on point, and someone who I'm very thrilled to have on board. So, Dr. Eline Dekeyster, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation.
You're most welcome. Dr. Dekeyster, I wonder if you might do me the courtesy of just giving a brief background for the audience. Who are you? Where have you come from? How did you get involved in the research field that you're currently involved in?
Yeah, of course. So I'm currently an assistant professor at Leiden University and head of a research group. Maybe go backwards instead of going forward. The name of my research group is Lifestyle Brain Interaction, LBI. And I think that covers everything that we are going to talk about today. And what I always do want to stress is that we don't say the effect of lifestyle on the brain, but lifestyle brain interaction, because I really believe it goes both ways. But then how did I end up here? Well, I'm a neurobiologist, so I'm not a psychiatrist or psychologist while I do psychology research. So I'm a neurobiologist. I studied in Leuven in Belgium, and then I moved to the Netherlands. I think it's over 10 years ago now, to work in the pharmaceutical industry. So I've been working on development of medicines and vaccines for 8 years, which actually taught me a lot about how that research works. And also, I'm not against medication, absolutely not, because I think it can help many people. I also think that's important to say. But then I kind of missed the more idealistic way of doing research, and that you believe in something and you don't do it from an also economical perspective, but really because you want to make an impact to the world. So that's when I wanted to return to academia. And when it comes to the topic, actually, I just came in contact for a more personal situation with the ketogenic diet, which of course, most important thing, or one of the lifestyle things we investigate. And I experienced that it has so much positive effects actually on my mood and mental clarity. And I'm a scientist, so I wanted to understand how that's possible. So I started to dig into the literature, and I only heard about it like from a weight loss perspective and a mere gut perspective. But then I saw it was research in epilepsy, in Alzheimer's, the field of metabolic psychiatry. And it kept my attention. And I saw that there was so much known already. So their potential is there, but there are also so many gaps. And I think that is what our purpose is, to fill these gaps. And how I came with autism is actually because that was one of the fields where we saw case reports and animal studies, but no real bigger human studies. Plus, my sister happens to be specialized in special education for children with autism and epilepsy, or that's often a comorbidity. So I gave her a call and I was like, hey, are you doing something with lifestyle, with the ketogenic diet? And she asked me, with what? So then I thought, okay, we have a lot to do here. So this is how I ended up in academia again, founded my own research group. We focus on autism, ADHD, and lifestyle interventions.
Nice. That's awesome. Fascinating background. And I love the fact that you brought up that when you first came across ketogenic diet, it sort of centered around weight loss and the typical, what I call physical manifestations of metabolic health improvement. But I was the same. When I first started experimenting with a ketogenic diet in 2018, it was just because I was getting fatter and fatter in spite of my exercise, and I wanted to fix that without counting calories. I'm a red-blooded South African male. I love food. So the thoughts of walking away from a meal still hungry because a number said that I've had enough I can't do that. So I went down the ketogenic route for physical reasons, but what really blew my mind was how much it impacted my mental health and the stability of just who I am as a person. I was less grumpy, I was less moody, I was far more stable. And I love, and I don't know if you're familiar with the paper, but I was reading Dr. Sethi's paper that came out just last month. And I love that they've sort of concluded there that the benefits are not necessarily associated to the sort of body composition correction. It's not the weight loss that's doing it. It's the actual state or the metabolic state of the brain being in ketosis, which yields the benefits. That blows my mind. It's fascinating. I wonder if you wouldn't mind just talking a little bit more about that. What is it in the research that you're looking for? And what are you seeing in terms of the change in how the brain works when it's running on ketones versus glucose?
I don't know if we need an introduction first on what ketones are and where they come from.
Maybe. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. Not a bad place to start.
When you eat a general Western diet, you typically eat a lot of potatoes, rice, pasta, things like that. And if you eat carbs, of course, they're transitioned into glucose in your body, and your cells use glucose as an energy source. But when you would be fasting or you eat very low carb, then actually your body will look for alternatives. And typically you can find that in fat tissue or fat you eat. What happens is that part of that fat is going to the liver, and in the liver it's transitioned to ketones. And what I always like to mention is that while in the general society, how people eat at the moment, or most people, that doesn't happen because you eat so many carbs, and typically also because you eat all day long, so you're not fasting. But if we look back in evolution, actually there were periods that there was no food available. So our ancestors just also had these ketones, and they were actually a surviving mechanism. For the periods where there was no food available, your body would run on ketones and you would have a chance to look for them again. So this is how actually those ketone molecules get in your blood. You can also drink them, but that's a different conversation. So your brain is actually the same as your body. It needs energy. The difference is that, or one of the differences is that your brain sucks energy because it's so energy demanding in all it does. Even when you're not thinking, even when you're sleeping, your brain just needs a lot of energy to rest and to process everything and to keep the brain alive. But when you're eating glucose, it typically goes in spikes. And it's not that stable. You eat, you have a peak of glucose, it goes back down, etc. And with ketones, you have much more stable energy supply. So that's already one of the things that you just feed your brain more stable. We're going to make the link to autism later on. Then another thing is that you have those neurotransmitters. The neurotransmitters help your brain cells to communicate with one another. And the ketogenic diet actually is used in epilepsy as a standard treatment. And there we know that an epileptic seizure actually is a disbalance between the excitatory, so the on neurotransmitters, and the resting neurotransmitters. So you get overexcitement in the brain. And so we know that in epilepsy, actually the ketones and following a ketogenic diet can help to restore that balance. We see dysregulation in that balance in almost every mental challenging disorder. So from schizophrenia and bipolar to ADHD, depression, autism, to all kind of brain-related struggles have that. Another thing is oxidative stress. This is a good thing. You need oxidation. It's a general procedure in your body, and typically it's well balanced with antioxidation. So you have oxidation, antioxidation, and that's doing great. The problem in current society is that typically we actually enhance the oxidation. How can that be the case? Lifestyle factors. Even just going out in the sun without sunscreen triggers extra oxidation. Eating too much processed food all the time triggers oxidation. And when it's disbalanced, it's dangerous for your cells, and it can even damage your DNA. And again, this elevated oxidation is something we see across many brain-related diseases or struggles. Inflammation is the same. Inflammation is a good thing. it protects you from getting sick, or it cures your skin when you scratch yourself or something like that. But too much and low-grade chronic inflammation is dangerous and damaging. And that is also what we see in people with mental or neurological challenges, is that they have this inflammation in their brain. And then to come back on the ketones have energy supplying effects, but they also are what we call a signaling molecule. And that means that they do all kind of stuff in your body, biochemical stuff. And for instance, they have an antioxidation effect. They have an anti-inflammatory effect. They have a stabilizing neurotransmitter effect. They regulate, or they are involved in regulation of gene expression. So through all these energy supply is one thing, but through all these different routes, they actually work at multiple processes at the same time. And that's a big difference compared to typical medicines that typically target one biochemical pathway. So
That's
this is where
fascinating.
ketones come from, and this is how they have a huge impact on how your brain functions.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That's a much more detailed explanation than the usual stable energy supply that many people in the metabolic health supposed to be familiar with. So thank you for that, because like you say, there's many different pathways ketone is acting on, and those effects compound to the benefit of how that brain runs, which is awesome. So with that in mind, we were saying that a carb-heavy diet, a modern carb-heavy diet, which is ultra-processed more often than not, and constant. So we human beings are not grazers. We're not meant to eat constantly through the day. We're, like you've hinted yourself, that we're meant to have those periods of fasting. From an evolutionary biology perspective, that's how our digestive system, how our metabolism is set up. But in modern day, people don't do that because we have access to food like never before in human history. So you can go and grab a snack whenever you want one. But for someone who is eating appropriately, shall we say, and is eating stuff which is focused on nourishment rather than calories, and is feeding their body with the right things, if they're achieving this status of ketosis, what all is that doing for the brain that you are looking for in your studies?
Yeah, a nuance I want to make is that you can eat very healthy and balanced without getting in ketosis. So also what I always say, it's not everybody should follow a ketogenic diet, but only if you really eat very low carb and high enough in fat, you will get in ketosis. Yeah, and actually what we are looking for is, we are mainly looking at the clinical effects. And then I mean the quality of life. We do biological measurements, we do take blood, we take EEGs, which are brain activity scans. But we, as our main readouts in every study we do, ADHD, autism, dementia, is quality of life from the person, him or herself or their selves, and their environments. So we also measure like family members or friends to see how it impacts their quality of life. And yeah, I think even if you don't see any symptom change, or you might see improvements in symptoms, if the quality of life reduces, because for instance, the diet feels too strict, you're nowhere. So we do measure the metabolic change. We hope to reverse insulin resistance, which is pre-diabetes. We hope to get more stable fat profiles and things like that. But overall, we want to improve quality of life, and we track a very broad spectrum of quality of life aspects. But also when we look into more the clinical questionnaires and the clinical observations, we are not just using autism scales. We do use them, but after we use them, we always have an interview in which we ask, in our case, the participants, because we work with adults in our study, do you experience this change as positive, neutral, or negative? Because, for instance, the stimming, like if somebody is doing this all the time, it might get worse. You do it more, but it might be stress relief. So actually, it might be experienced as positive. And in one of our case studies, we had a girl saying, my family said it got worse. I got more autistic. But she felt so much better because she still had a sensory overloads, but then it didn't completely disturb her sleep hours later. So she really saw that what was the effect. And that's also, so we have quality of life autism scales, but we also do anxiety, depression, cognitive, also subjective cognitive experiences, because you can measure it in a computer task. But I actually don't care about the score of the computer task. Do you have the impression that your that your cognitive abilities are better, and how does your environment sees that? Because if you become more stable or also more independent, it has an impact on the caregivers.
Yeah.
So yeah, we measure a broad range of things, but my core aspect is always quality of life. That's what matters most.
No, I love that. I love that. We were talking just before we started recording, and I had some friends over yesterday, and I was describing how we had 3 autistic boys all together in the same space, but 3 completely different manifestations, 3 completely different presentations of behavior and function. So yeah, that resonates strongly with me. You can't just have a set specific criteria, do it, which has its utility. Let's be fair. If you're doing large scale studies and stuff, you do need standards to apply.
Yeah.
But at the same time, having that lens where you're looking at individual quality of life, like that's hugely game changing from a caregiver perspective, because that's the thing that really matters to us. Like we're not after trying to cure autism, but we certainly want to bring out the best possible outcomes for my son, for example. And I'm pretty sure every other autism parent feels the same. We're just looking for ways to try and provide them the platform, become the best version of themselves that they can be, whatever that may look like.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love it. That's awesome. And what is your experience so far in the research that you're doing? I appreciate the field is quite new in this particular lens, which is fantastic. But what are you seeing? What are your thoughts and feelings on the direction that it's going?
Now, it is new in a sense that there are no large studies yet, but there are quite some case reports, especially in children. Actually, the adult field is like there's no publication at all. So we are really the first ones doing that. No idea of what will come out of it, but we have case reports. So as in we have reasons to believe that we will see something. But with children, there are quite some cases published in which also like the standard autism scales were measured. But there's also one case where they really did a brain scan in which you can see the glucose use in the brain. And that was different from what you see in neurotypical children from the same age. And that brain scan was a trigger for the clinicians to try a ketogenic diet in that child. And they did see changes in behavior, in sleep patterns and things like that. But also in the brain scan, they saw, and I don't like to call it normalization, but it went closer to what you see in neurotypical children from that age. So those publications are there. So it is seen. There also are some a little bit larger studies with like 45 children, 3 groups. They did normal diet, gluten-free, casein-free diet, and ketogenic diets. And gluten-free, casein-free, and keto both showed effects.
Okay.
And there we come also, I think, to the personalization. There were some aspects where keto had a larger effect, but not in all. And as autism is showing different in every child or adult who has a diagnosis, the same is true for metabolism. The microbiome is so different. We don't understand anything about it. We just start to look into it. So how that diet should look like is also so personalized. But to answer on the question I'm driving off, where does the field stand? Well, there is enough to believe in it and for us to at least start doing the studies. And as a scientist, I can't tell. Whatever the outcome is from the study, I will embrace it. But even there, we always say, like, as in not all scientists say that, but I do, we measure averages in our studies because we have to have large scales. We need statistics to ever be able to really say this has been proven. But there's no average patient. So also the individual stories I always also say, like, there's a difference between something is true and something has been proven. The cases are true, and maybe we don't understand what and everything, and we do need the studies also for safety perspectives, because it can be dangerous for some people, so we need to follow up on the blood values and understand that better. But the current cases are promising, and so if somebody wants to give it a try, I don't think you have time to wait for the outcomes of the big studies. And I'm not giving medical advice, I'm not saying anything, but if you're interested, I would say read a bit more about it and discuss it with medical professionals. Don't do it on your own. But yeah, I think that is where the field is now, super new. But I would be very surprised if there's not something in there based on what has been published and the experience stories that we get from people.
No, I agree. And I love that you touched on the fact that there's sort of no one size fits all either. I'll just take my own personal experience. My boy is undergoing assessment for ARFID, as we discussed before we started recording. So as much as I would love to try a ketogenic diet on him, I know that at this point in time, it's not even within the realm of possibility. So for me, it's a case of we're trying to get him the diagnosis so we can get him the occupational therapy to help with the practice and overwhelm associated to eating itself. And then once we hopefully get him eating, then we can have a look at how we influence what he was eating. Because I started him on a more what I call nutritionally focused diet, rewinding about a year now. He had come off milk and he had gone on to the weaning sachets, and he would eat those quite regularly. There was a handful of them that he would eat, but when we were trying to get him onto solid foods, that's when we first started noticing that there was an aversion to food that wasn't just fussiness. So he looks visibly frightened of it. You'll want to try it, but when he tries to bring a bite to his mouth, you can see the overwhelm hit and he just can't. And so he was on the sachets, and I thought, okay, well, we have to work with what we've got. And I started cooking up like some lamb mince or beef mince and blending it to the same texture as the puree and then mixing it just to get the nutritional content of it up. And he was doing well on that. But then he started school last September and he regressed terribly. He regressed to the point where there's now a single baby porridge that he will eat. And then he will, from time to time, try crisps, Doritos specifically, and he'll try Oreos, both of which are nutritionally bankrupt, of no use to him at all. So we try and restrict and limit those. But yeah, that's sort of where we stand now. And again, you have to work with what we've got. So
yeah. But what I also do like in that approach is that you did try to kind of get the keto food or the nutrition dense food apart from keto as close as what he was already eating. And we also had a case like that, and that was somebody who only wanted to eat white food. Again, it was an adult, but you can do 2 weeks of very strict keto and only white food. So we had a dietitian who developed a plan for 2 weeks, and then after those 2 weeks you could kind of start seeing what else was possible. So again, that's really personalization.
Yeah, and I guess the takeaway from that whole sort of story is that you have to recognize the constraints of what you're working with, and then there's ways to try and find ways to make it improve. And it's a game of percentages, because I think that long-term success is defined by little 1% incremental improvements. Now, if you can be 1% better today than it was yesterday, and you can do that consistently over time, you're winning. But it's small, sustainable steps, and then it's all hills and valleys and troughs, and so you'll have some setbacks, but you work with it.
Something I also always say is when people say like, so should I do it with this patient? Well, you have the biomedical situation. Maybe do a blood screening and it seems a good match and it's safe and it would, as in the person has insulin resistance. But there's also socioeconomical situation and the context, and because we do, for instance, ADHD. Well, a student with ADHD who is living in a student city with friends is a completely different situation from a child living home, having specific eating restrictive behavior. I think that's what, plus what a friend of mine who is a psychiatrist always says is, this field is a little bit dangerous for people to start thinking it is their own fault if it is not progressing. Because if I would just eat keto, and you especially, of course, see that in adults who have control of their own food and behavior, but for instance, somebody with depression, and they see those success stories and studies, it's my own fault. If I would just eat keto, I would not have the depression. And that's not true. Because one, it might just not be possible for you to do it now. Two, it might not work for you.
Yeah.
It's same with medication. It doesn't work for everybody, and it might not even be safe for you. But that is and Karen, so my friend who's a psychiatrist, always says that, like, we really also have to spread the message, like, don't make it like I have my health in full control, because you don't. There are genetic aspects. There are all kind of aspects that contribute to how it goes.
Yeah, I like when it comes to nutrition, my take on it is that you get down to essential nutrients. For me, they're the basic building blocks. We know what the essential nutrients are for a human being, and we have a fairly good idea which food sources are dense in those nutrients, which come with the preformed versions, which come with the precursor versions. Although that much is not widely taught in school. People don't tend to understand bioavailability very well. But if you take some time to learn about what the essential nutrients are and which forms or which food sources are bioavailable, meaning that your body can actually use the forms that are present, then you have the building blocks and you can figure out what works for you, how you can put together a menu that you are willing to eat sustainably. And you know that is at least nutritionally dense enough to be meeting your needs. Yeah. And that means that there's range to this. It's not one size fits all. You don't have to have a specific constrained diet, which I think is incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
Dr. Dekeyster, we could carry on talking for hours, but I'm mindful that you've got another meeting coming up. So is the last thing. If you had one piece of advice for a autism caregiver, what would that be for you?
Yeah, totally unrelated to food. It would be talk to other caregivers. And that's, I think, what you're also doing in building the platform. Because I think people who are not having the same experience just cannot understand. And of course, if it's linked to lifestyle, it would be open to it and just listen, or as in start reading a little bit about it, because what you say about those building blocks, people just don't have an idea. Many people, and that's normal because you don't hear many people talking about it. You don't learn it at school. It's even not in med school at the moment at that level. So what I would say is be curious, and I think that's a starting point. Just getting to know the field a bit better about metabolic health and nutritional health and mental health and how that relates. That's a good start. And if you would want to consider trying something out, contact a proper healthcare professional, because you have a lot of misinformation online as well. And coaches promising things. And I think that's dangerous because their target audience are vulnerable people looking for help. So that I would also say, like, work with a dietitian, inform your GP, and but also just be proud of what you are already doing.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I appreciate that. Thank you for the wonderful work that you are doing. I mean, I follow it, and I encourage everyone watching to sort of follow you on your social medias and on your publication platforms as well. It's really mind-blowing stuff, especially for the autism community. That's where I come from, so that's hugely valuable to me. Thank you. Long may it continue, and we'll be keeping an eye on your future publications.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching the episode. I hope that you found the conversation meaningful and informative, and I hope that it has empowered you with some tools and insights that you can take to tweak and improve your own lifestyle approach in pursuit of optimal metabolic health outcomes. If you've enjoyed the episode, and if you're enjoying the podcast, I'd like you to do me the kindness of please subscribing to the channel, giving it a like, maybe even giving it a share. Help to raise awareness and get the podcast in front of as many viewers as possible, because it is my passion to try and help as many people as possible to understand more of the nuance around metabolic health and how to tweak their lifestyle in pursuit of optimal outcomes. Also, if you have any constructive feedback, things that you think I could improve on, any critiques, any criticisms, please do feed them back. I give you my solemn word that I will take them seriously, and I will, to the best of my ability, work to improve and to give you a more refined and more targeted product as a result of your feedback. So I will take it seriously, and I'll do what I can to improve the show. But again, thank you very much for watching. Keep thriving.